Hi, hello, vanakkam, namaskar, and welcome to yet another episode of my podcast, The People I Meet. My name is Shruti Vijay Kumar Basant. I'm a radio jockey from Chennai, and through this podcast, I introduce to you the people I quite literally meet in life, who I'm inspired by, who have some beautiful stories to share. So today, the person I'm going to be introducing to you is someone who I actually, when I first knew who this person was, we are actually connected. We go way back. We have a connection that actually stems from her being my college senior, but we never actually uttered a word to each other during our time there. But today, I can very honestly say from the bottom of my heart that I've had some very interesting, very intense, thought-provoking conversations with her. And she is somebody who is truly creative, somebody who thinks out of the box constantly, and the sort of work that she has created has definitely left a mark. The people who follow her know what I'm talking about. She constantly keeps her followers on their toes and is creative in every sense of the word. So somebody that I have a lot of respect for, somebody who I am, truly inspired by. I'm very, very happy that she agreed to be a part of my podcast today. And I want to introduce to you Ramya, a.k.a. the Arbitrary. Hi, Ramya. Welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Shruti. It's so amazing to be here.
Thank you. All right. So we're obviously going to start with a bunch of questions because, like today on social media, right? We all sort of portray an image about ourselves. And as much as we are, I think a lot of us are very honest, very true to the personality that we are. So what you see is what you get, right? But a lot of people know about your calligraphy skill. A lot of people know about how creative you are. A lot of people know about your love for coffee, right? But what are things that people don't often know about Ramya? That's the first question I want to start my podcast with.
Okay, maybe something that is not very apparent on social media is that I'm not very social.
Right.
My friends have to struggle to drag me out to anywhere outside.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy being at home. I'm happy not talking to people. And I actually like that with Instagram. I just have to do a DM, right? Like I'm not actually sitting and talking to people. So it's kind of giving me a nice screen. So I'm 100% an introvert. And sometimes because I'm always online, always responding to DMs or like always putting up a story, people assume, oh, you're so social, you know so many people. But no, I'm not at all.
Wow.
I'm happy to stay home and watch Netflix.
Wow. So see, this is something I'm so happy that I asked this question right off the bat when we entered this podcast, because social media very often portrays a very different image of us, right? And like I said earlier, even though we like to keep things real, we like to keep things maybe 100% positive or whatever it is, somewhere it's obviously not possible to be that person every single time. And for somebody who is 100% introvert, I think you do a commendable job of, keeping your social media presence very, very, very strong. All right. So let's go back to sort of this beginning, right? And like I mentioned to my listeners right at the beginning, Ramya is actually my college senior. We studied in the same college, but we had no clue that we, had this connection up until the time I actually spoke to her online. Right. And I remember our first few conversations when you were in the US and, we would talk about a particular set of things. We would talk about our mutual love for calligraphy and, just random offbeat topics. But when you were in the US, you were talking to me a little bit about how you wanted to do something more with your art. And there was a very, a driven reason behind why you made that switch, because not everybody would do that, right? Give up a lucrative, very cushy, you are also a very, very successful person at your job, right? So how did that happen? What sort of ignited that spark in you to make the move?
I think it was just getting a little bit more obsessed every single day with what I was doing. So I was doing well at my job, like you said. I was up for a promotion in like the next 6 months to a year. Everything was going fine. I was good at it. I was making decent money and I was living in one of the best cities in the world, like just to die for, right? To live in New York, in your own studio, just have your own life, do whatever you want.
Right.
And then calligraphy happened and other forms of lettering and other creative things happened. And it was just like, I know this is very like corny of me to say, but Ernest Hemingway has a quote where he's like, you fall gradually and then suddenly you're just all in. So that's how I felt, like every single day there's a little bit of extra obsession where my mornings were reserved for Instagram work or creative work or calligraphy. And I found myself just waking up earlier and earlier in the day because I wanted to spend more time on that before my work day started. And after a point, it got too boring to stay on work calls and talk about data and IT and everything. I was like, I just want to go write my book. I just want to go write something, draw something. So I think that was maybe the slow trigger, I would say, not necessarily a switch, but it was just a nagging pain that I just had to deal with and take a call.
Right. So talking about that specifically, right? You were talking about how you would keep these mornings, your mornings were sort of, dedicated to Instagram and things like that. So I remember you had this sort of a trend when, you started off your social media account, you would create these challenges, which was, I think, how we sort of basically connected and we started talking.
Yeah.
So how did those challenges sort of put you on this journey? Because I think somewhere that was something that was very, very intriguing for your followers. I think a lot of people were very, I remember when one day if I didn't get the answer correct, I would be like, no, Ramya, this is not how it's supposed to happen, right? I'm sure you would have got several DMs relating to that. So how did that sort of happen? Why did you decide to take that route of, creating these monthly challenges?
So it started off without any agenda, to be honest. Right. So I made a nice calendar with the sketch I drew and it was January of 2018, I think, if I'm right. So I made a calendar and I was thinking, how do I show people this calendar? How do I go out there into the internet world and say, this is something I made, you should go download it. And it was free. You can just go somewhere and download it and print it for yourself. And so I thought I'll show it off, which was right around the time that Stories was introduced. So I thought, I'll use Stories because it's going to disappear in 24 hours. And I'll just show people every day, look, here's a calendar, here's a calendar, here's a calendar.
Right.
And then how do I make it interesting, right? So I made it interesting just by trying to doodle on stuff. And I was just showing it off. And the next month, because I did that so consistently, I was so happy about going onto Instagram and doing that. And people started talking to me, which I thought was very, very fun. People were connecting with me from all around the world, like you. I had connections that I didn't know existed, that I didn't hadn't spoken to for a really long time, that started talking to me. And I thought, this is nice. For an introvert who doesn't have a social life, this is nice, where I'm able to actually talk to people and enjoy it. So in February, I just, made it a little better. And I said, okay, it's not just going to be for me, it's going to be for you. And so we did use the same calendar again, because I made one for February. And I said, okay, in this little calendar, I'm just going to unscramble some letters and you guys can figure out what that word is. And to make it interesting, I'm going to write with my left. Because you won't know what letters I'm using. And it made for some very interesting DMs and very interesting conversations. So it was more of me being in this humongous city and right after a breakup and depression, all of that stuff going on. I just felt a lot less alone, I think, just because I had Instagram and all the people on there. So it was almost my way of saying thank you and keeping that connection alive was really how the puzzle started. I genuinely had no idea it would become a thing that people would find me or identify me with, or even talk to me about.
Right. A lot of good things come from bad experiences. This is something that I have experienced in life as well. Because I've had this conversation with a lot of people. Very often you realize after you lose something or after we lose ourselves, right? Especially when it comes to situations like a breakup or something where we're dealing with something that's a loss that we truly sort of want to recover from. We put all of our energy, we channel all of our energy into doing something positive, and that sort of really opens avenues for us. And I think that in your case, that was something that truly happened. And like you said, as an introvert, you felt comfortable being on social media because it was still, you were still protected by a screen. You didn't have to go beyond
I can throw it off. You can switch it off.
Right. Okay, so that is how the whole challenge started. And I think you made a lot of good connects, like you said, through those conversations.
Yeah. But people got to know me, I got to know people.
Right, but something that the most I think what I enjoyed about your challenges was how you became an author. Okay, that is something that is truly, I think, made for Bollywood. People should make a real movie about you and how an internet challenge makes somebody an author. So take us through that process. How did that happen?
So similar concept again. I didn't plan for anything. I just knew I had to have a challenge every single month. So and I'm very last minute at everything. Even though my day job was a project manager, I just didn't plan my life at all. So I think October 29, we had like 3 more days before I had to announce the next challenge for November.
Okay.
And I saw this advertisement for National Novel Writing Month, which was in November.
Right.
And so I kept getting these ads from Instagram saying, oh, you write a novel. It's like you take all of November and there's a community and all of that. And I was like, I don't want that community. I have my community. Let me see if I can do something with this here. And I was about to turn 30. So it was one of my like milestones to achieve before I turned 30 was like write a book.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to use these people because like you said, people were so engaged on all these challenges that if I didn't do something, I would hear from them. Like, if I didn't post something by a certain time.
Yeah, because you were held.
Say, what's going on?
Yeah, you were held accountable.
100%. And so I thought, okay, you know what? If instead of one accountability buddy who can make you, you know, progress with whatever goal you have, why don't I make the existing, I think I had like 600 or something followers at the time. Why don't I make all of these people my accountability buddies and maybe they'll be as interested in this. So I literally just, I think made a video of myself talking at the screen and said, okay, November, we're not going to do a regular challenge. We're going to do this thing called Help Me Tell a Story. I like naming things. So I was like, I'm going to call this challenge Help Me Tell a Story because I have no clue how to write one or like no motivation. So I'm going to start. And then you guys tell me which way it should go, right? So it was a lot of maybe even like getting over that creative fear of you creating your own thing and that turning to be not as good, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this like really less pressure. No one's going to read this because I'm just doing this by myself. So it's okay if it's bad, you know, and we're going to have fun in the process because I've realized in the last like 2 years that I've done any kind of art stuff, I'm always happiest when I'm making it, not so much when it's done, right? So I thought, okay, how can I make this really, really fun for myself? And that's how it started. And I thought to make it fun for the people that are participating in it, let them have a say in how the story is moving, right? So that's why every day, even though I wrote a chapter every day, the next chapter and the way it was going to take was fully in the hands of the audience because it was, okay, here are 2 options for you to vote on for how the next chapter begins. You pick it and then I will check it every morning at 7 a.m. my time and just start writing no matter what you've chosen. And I can say for sure, not once did you guys choose the way I wanted you to. We did 29 chapters and all 29 were just, I would go to bed thinking, oh, they would choose this because it makes sense. You know, like they've read the previous chapter snippet, it makes sense.
Logical step.
Yeah, it's just the logical step. And you guys would just throw me a curveball in the morning and I would look at it and go, wait, how do I take the story forward now? But it was probably the funnest way to write a book, in my personal opinion. It was just a lot of fun.
Okay, so if anybody who's listening to this right now is looking for some motivation, is looking for some inspiration as to how to turn author, you can contact Ramya, slide into her DMs and be like, hey dude, how did you do this? Okay, and I promise you she'll give you a lot of entertaining answers for that. But moving on, okay, so when you were talking about your milestone, I know that you covered a lot of things. You made the switch, a reverse migration of sorts from the US to Chennai. And I remember you talking about how at that particular point of time, because you were on a particular visa, you could not monetize the art that you were creating, which was one of those main reasons why you decided, hey, you know what, I want to be able to do this for the rest of my life. I remember you went to all of these really, fancy exhibitions, I don't know what to call them, but you went there to sort of, learn the craft. Right? It was not something that you just decided, okay, I'm going to be a creator. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to move to Chennai with my parents and just sort of do this. So how did that process sort of settle in? Because I'm sure you've lived in New York for a really long time. And like you said, it's one of the dream cities. So when the days were getting closer, when the countdown was actually happening, what was going on in your mind during that time?
I think I found out truly what the definition of bittersweet was, because the sweet part was truly that I was able to follow my passion, right? I had said, I had maybe shown, for lack of a better word, the middle finger to a conventional life and said, I'm not going to do what I was expected to do, supposed to do, studied to do, whatever it was. And I'm going to go figure out my own path and I'm going to start when I'm 30. I think I was 30 when I came back. So it was even by the Western standards, it was starting over, right? At a pretty later stage in life. And I was so happy, excited, anxious, wanted all of those things together, I was fine with that. The bitter part, I think, was just leaving behind my world and my city that I knew, because I really did think after moving to New York, because it is such a big city and it's a melting pot of, different cultures and people, and you can be anybody you want, right? When you're not from a place where people know you, you can be anybody you want. You can reinvent who you are. You can basically that, right? So I think I had that feeling in New York where I thought I was the most powerful woman in my bubble. in the city, so it really did feel like home. So to leave that and come back and kind of start over in a city that maybe I didn't recognize anymore because I'd been away for almost a decade. I think more so the city didn't recognize me and I didn't recognize the city, right? So it was both ways. So that was a little bitter for me in that, I'm not able to stay in the city I thought I would stay in for like the next 5-10 years, and I'm moving. But at the same time, it needed to be done, like you said, with the visa and everything. I had to get out. I didn't know where I was headed to. Like that wasn't a very proper decision, I would say. But the decision to leave had to be a proper one because I couldn't stay there and still continue to find my voice as an artist.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's quite inspiring because coming from a very typical middle class Indian household, I sort of totally understand because when I decided to make that switch after getting the MBA degree, and then I went and told my dad, listen, this is not working out. I need to do something where I'm happy. At the end of the day, I think something that truly a lot of people don't understand or relate to is the happiness that you get out from doing whatever it is that you're doing, right? Because this is something you're going to be doing for a very long time, right? As cliche as it sounds, when people say, find a job that truly makes you happy, I think people don't realize how important that word happiness is, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so when you were talking about this switch and you said that you didn't recognize Madras for what it was, I'm saying Madras because I think Chennai...
It's Madras to us.
It is Madras to us, right? I mean, even though we don't belong to the 80s or a little earlier generation, somewhere a Madras is still left in Chennai. And I think that's what we as 90s kids sort of relate to. When you came back, and I'm sure they had all of those questions that they would ask any 30-year-old woman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody after 25?
30-year-old.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So how did you sort of deal with that? Because I know what societal pressure can do to dreams. I know what, because I've lived here long enough to understand what that sort of does to a person's psyche. And for somebody who's as broad-minded as you are, somebody who's lived in a city where, you said you can be anybody who you want to be. How did that sort of, play on your personality?
I think that's why I said the city didn't recognize me when I came back, because when I left, I was like this person from this really small bubble. I didn't have friends outside the city even. Like my first friend from Bangalore was one that I made in the US, which is really funny. Like I've been here for 22 years and I didn't meet anybody, right? So I think the West had maybe like prepared me for these questions because I came back not only with like that broad-mindedness and being okay with where I was and where everybody was, not judging and all that. I came back like really, really sure about who I was and what I wanted to do, and that I didn't owe anyone else an explanation. And that last part was probably what really saved my sanity, I think, when I came back, because it was everybody, right? Like right from even friends that maybe didn't understand how much I'd grown, or like my own aunts and my relatives, or like acquaintances I would meet who would be like, so what is it that you do? And I had no answer, right? I came back and I was like, I don't know. And I just got so comfortable saying, I don't know what I'm doing. And when the marriage thing came up, I would just like use humor to kind of diffuse the situation and basically say, oh yeah, just, send me any guy you have, I'll talk to him.
Right.
We'll see where it goes. And they were just so taken aback that I was okay with being, I guess, 30 and single and not having a career yet, because I knew I would see this when I came back, and I came like maybe a little bit mentally prepared, and I had a set of friends to vent to. I would like put on a brave face, do all of this, and then at night call them and be like, I don't know what I'm doing here, like why am I doing this to myself? So just being real, right? Like that happens too, but I didn't show it. It was like I held my own, I think, in those conversations, that they just stopped bothering me.
Right. I think that's a very honest answer, because sometimes being prepared, you can never be too prepared for situations like this, because at some point you do feel frustrated, you do sort of melt down, and you start asking yourself, am I making the right choice? You somewhere you have that doubt, that 1% sort of keeps nagging at you, and you start wondering, you start questioning your very existence. And the society sort of has that capability, if I could call it like that. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about your career now, right? Your arts is something that I think has truly inspired a lot of people, including myself. I think I fell in love with calligraphy once again after having watched your work and after having learned from you. So thank you so much, Guru, for accepting me as your student. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, right? So once you came back, you decided you were going to take classes. You did a couple of actual, not virtual classes. You actually met people in a coffee shop and you took classes. So how did that sort of fit into your career path? Is this something that you decided? Is this a plan that you had, that this is how you were going to go about it, or how did you just wing it?
Yeah, so I think it's been a question on my mind lately, actually, in the last few weeks too. And it's also something that I had no plan, basically. That was it. I had no plan when I came back. And so people in the US, before I left, my friends in the US that I'd gone to meet would be like, so what are you going to do? We're like fully supporting you. We're your friends, but really, what are you going to do? And I had no idea. I had just finished the book. So I was so interested in like storytelling and TV and movies and how people can feel emotions because of what's happening on the screen or a book. And I was also interested in calligraphy and just trying that out longer term. So I just thought I would come back. And I wanted to just learn about these industries that I didn't have exposure to. So like the movie industry, the advertising industry, the art industry. I was so into tech and engineering when I was studying that I had no idea about these. So I gave myself a whole year to just sort of mess around and play around and go try new things just for the heck of it. Because I wanted to see what it was like. And because I'd left my job to do things that gave me happiness, I was doing a happiness check with everything I was doing. So I said, I'm going to teach and see if that makes me happy. I'm going to do voice acting, see if that makes me happy. I'm going to do art direction, see if that makes me happy. And I got to learn a lot about who I was and what I wanted to do. So the calligraphy classes, I think one came from people really wanting to learn and like DMing me and saying, can you teach? But it was also like not part of the plan. I was winging it because it was basically once me saying something to a friend and a friend saying, so why don't you try it? Because my initial like gripe about teaching was that there were too many people, and as an introvert, again, I cannot handle more than 6 people at a time. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to teach workshops that are for 20 people. So I'm not going to do it. And my friend was just like, why should you be like everybody else? Like, why don't you do a 6-person workshop? Why don't you do a 5-person one? Just whatever works for you, because you want to do this for fun anyway. See if it makes you happy, and then you can move on, right? So that's pretty much how it started. And then I also like took on client projects and did a few of my own. I did a panel collaboration and all that. And in all of this, I think I realized which ones I liked and which ones I didn't. And so I like, while teaching is still really, really close to my heart, I also realized I don't like client work as much. And I really just want to create my own products and, my own voice out there, which just made me the happiest to say I made this and someone's actually finding enjoyment in it. So yeah, I think I'm still winging it. There's still no plan.
This is sort of like Phoebe from Friends and say, I don't even have a plan.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It's basically
I
that.
would be Phoebe from Friends.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you ask a lot of people, especially after 2020, the way it has turned out, I think a lot of people would put themselves in Phoebe's shoes and say that. All right. Okay. So actually, this is a question that I've had. It just sort of sprung to my mind now when you were talking about it. Because when you talk about the arts, when you talk about creating, and when you talk about your brand, you have so much of happiness. And like you said, this happiness check, you wanted to see if these things make you happy. I think that's a very beautiful thought, because not a lot of people think about it when they sort of set on a career path. Of course, I'm not saying that a lot of people don't enjoy their 9-to-5 jobs. I'm not saying that at all. I know a lot of people who are very, very happy at the tech related jobs and they find joy in it. Right? So give me 2 pros and 2 cons of your previous job in the US.
Okay. So I think the pros are maybe easy. I made a lot of money.
Right.
So that was
I am totally for financial independence. So definitely yes.
Yeah,
I
didn't have to. Yeah, I didn't have to think twice about fine dining or designer shoes, which was a fun life by itself. No, but I think honestly, the pros were like there was maybe a lot of structure around it, right? Because I knew it was transactional. So the amount of work I put in resulted in me getting the amount of money that they were giving me, or the bonus or the promotion or the next big project or whatnot. It's like Instagram likes, but to another level, right? With money attached. So that was like very clear validation, which is, every day you knew if you were doing a good job or not, just based off of the client yelling at you or your boss liking what you did or something like that. So I think the structure part of this was a big pro. The second was for me, my field was in healthcare when I was a project manager there. And I had always wanted to become a doctor when I was younger. I don't know how I ended up here doing this now. It's crazy.
Wow. I'm just looking at your journey is just like from a doctor. I mean, now that I've known you personally for all these years, I think it's just difficult for me to imagine you in a doctor's school.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I'm glad that you work in healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah, so healthcare was got me a little closer. So I think maybe if it was a different field, I may not have enjoyed my job as much as I did because it was fully tech, and I'm not so much a tech person. I like tech from the outside. I don't really like working in it that much in coding and all that. But it made it bearable because it was healthcare, and I got to talk to doctors on a daily basis and look at patient histories and all that, which is very, very fun for me. So I think those are the two pros, a lot of structure, and it was a field that I really liked it. I think the cons were you can get complacent because there is so much structure. You're not constantly striving to do better things. You get good at your job, and then they keep giving you things that show you're good at your job. And I felt really suffocated with that. So initially, when I was in the job, every 6 months I would request a transfer to a different role, even within the same team. I'd be like, can I take on something new? Can I go learn something that makes me uncomfortable? Because I always love, like I said, the creation part of it, the learning part of it, the making mistakes part of it, the being uncomfortable part of it. And sometimes in large corporations, just by definition of the jobs and how they're set up, you don't have a lot of space to learn and make mistakes and be uncomfortable. So I think I did that for about 9 years or something. I was at the job, and then by the 9th year, I could do this in my sleep, and it was so frustrating for me. And yes, they were paying me for what money, what value I was providing them, but it wasn't fun for me anymore. And that's where that happiness checks comes in, right? Because if you're not happy about waking up for work Monday morning, you should probably not be in that job unless you have a financial constraint and you absolutely have to be in it. And for me, it got to that point, and I think that was it. Okay, I've been a project manager, I've been a bad one, I became an okay one, I became a really good one, and then now what? So I think that was one of my problems with it, is I wasn't growing as much as I would like to. My boss would joke and say, you're the only person who's unhappy that you're not happy. I'm I know, I get it, but I want to be learning. I don't want to be comfortable every day coming to the job. I don't want to just be I've done everything. I think another con was probably just not being able to... Yes. The first one was you get complacent. The second one, I think the second one was maybe I didn't get to feel the same kind of joy I did, when I wrote the book. That's probably it. I didn't get to weave these stories. So because I was a project manager, the fun part of my job for me was to spin things around, right? So basically, and I'm sure every project manager is going to hell for this, but our job is basically lying. We will take really bad news and try to spin it in the most positive way possible for our clients, right? So we're everything crashes, and then we would be we're resetting all these things. Think of all the new things you'll be getting. So don't worry about this crash. So this used to be my job.
No, and I think after a while, project managers, darling. A lot of people in a lot of different professions are doing that right now. So,
any client service professional, I think we have to do that. And for me, it felt that made me feel creative, but I couldn't take it past that.
There's only so much
bigger things, better things.
There's only so much
stories.
And
I'm not able to tell it because it's not the right place for it. But no, I think genuinely I really did enjoy my job, especially in the later years as I got better at it. It was just, there's something else that was just way, way more exciting that I could not bring myself to sit on a call, because we used to have these client calls and they would be on the phone. You're not on video, so you can do whatever you want on the side. And I would just be on these calls and just flipping through books and reading up on how to write stories or how to make my lettering better. And I was just I'm not being loyal to this anymore. Yes, I'm good at it. I'm not slacking. But it's still if you're not that into it, you should leave it, for people, for things, for jobs, whatever they are. You should be fully into it, I think.
That's a very honest admission from your part, okay? And I really mean this when I say it. As much as I want a lot of people to listen to my podcast, I don't think that you should send this to your colleagues, I mean your ex-colleagues or your ex-boss, because he's going to be like, oh my God, this is what she was doing as a side hustle. But anyway, jokes apart.
Oh, they know. Yeah.
Okay, then it's fine. As long as then I'm in the clear and I'm not getting you into trouble with your ex, company. But again, I mean, I think something that I've truly admired about you is the fact that you just said all of these things in a very honest and candid way, because that is something that's very rare, right? I think as humans, we always search for things that make us happy, but somewhere we don't realize that lies within us. It's possible if we think about it, right? Of course, I'm not saying a pair of designer shoes doesn't make us happy, or a trip to some really fancy location doesn't make us happy. I'm not saying the materialistic things don't give us happiness, but like you said, waking up on a Monday morning and actually going to work should excite you, because you're going to be doing that for a very long time. So that's a very, very honest admission. So thank you so much for that. So if anybody is listening, remember that a job is not just about, of course, financial independence is very, very important, and I would never say no to that. But somewhere, just make sure that you are happy doing whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, whatever it is that you're doing. On that note, I want to sort of come back to the present and talk about, today you're dabbling with multiple things. You're teaching on one side, you're doing a lot of artwork, you're in the process of creating something that's very unique to your brand as well, right? So in this process, obviously there's a lot that we don't see. Because at the end of the day, we see the picture that's posted on Instagram, maximum a video maybe of if you felt like putting yourself out there and taking a video. But how does it sort of affect you when things don't go your way? Because being an artist can be extremely frustrating, right? That's not something that everybody sees. So how do you sort of handle that?
Yeah, so basically I think I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks too. So it's like the timing of discussion is just perfect. And you're right, like artists do not like what they make most of the time. We finish something and we're like, this is crap. I don't want to post this. I don't want anyone to ever see this, which in itself is a huge block, right? And so I just have to remind myself to be humble, because every time I feel that, I'll look at my Instagram account and be like, I'm not that famous. Like, I don't have a blue tick. There aren't so many people looking at my stuff. So it's okay if it's bad. This is how I get better at it. So quantity at this point over quality, that's fine. Because anyway, I'm going to see the progression. And every time I feel like I'm not progressing, I go see what I've done a year ago, year and a half ago. And they're so bad in comparison to what I do today. So I know this is the only way I can get better. But I also think the stuff that people don't see, which is very, very true. It's all of these ideas that don't make it to the grid. It's all of those ideas that you've created, you've shot, and then they look really bad that you just feel you need to go a different direction. And also how much labor goes into actually making something. My specific kind of art, because it has to do with things. It's not just writing with a pen anymore, and we're writing with so many other things. A lot of it is mostly backbreaking work, because I'm hunched over, like standing and hunched over doing something for like 4 hours together, and I won't realize it, because again, doing what I love, so I don't see the time going by. And then 4 hours later, when I'm trying to stand up straight, is when I realize, I'm 30, I should not be doing this anymore. So yeah, I think that's the stuff that people don't see, but it makes it makes it fun at the end anyway. It still makes you happy. It passes that happiness check.
Right. No, I think artists across all art forms, right? Whether it's the visual arts, whether it's performing arts, I think all of us go through this phase, whether it's a dancer's block or a creator's block itself, right? And somehow we sort of keep pushing ourselves. Like you said, we somewhere also compare with what we've done in the past, and we also look at other artists for inspiration, right? Do you have that? Do you have somebody who you look up to and sort of feel like, hey, I'm feeling low. I'm sure that this person is going to sort of pull me back from that. Do you have something like that?
That's a good question. So I do have sources that pull me back. It's not necessarily a person.
A person?
And because my field is a lot more, it's very easy to copy from someone else if you're only following that one person. So I try to make sure that I'm not only following one person, right? And it's also really a fine line between like copying and doing the same thing as them, which is also, again, really difficult because your brain is filled with these images and these people. And so unintentionally, you end up doing stuff like that. And so I consciously try not to follow people who are in my field.
Right.
Which seems very counterintuitive, but I do that. And I usually follow people who work more with food or with like baking or dancing or just other forms of art, because you can learn so much from those industries. You can learn so much from how they are maybe catching light, or how they use a particular prop, or just how they write their captions, or what stories they tell, and how they're trying to bring an idea into what they're making. So my source of inspiration is usually like other artists that I follow that are not lettering artists on my Instagram feed, plus baking shows. I have a thing for baking shows. I don't even know why. I don't bake. I don't eat that much cake, but I still love baking shows.
Right.
And sometimes you also just need to like take a walk or just free your mind, right? So that's where my favorite murder shows will come in. Like I'll just go watch people get killed,
right,
and what get caught, and that just sort of clears a block in my head, and I'll see maybe like something that they're using in that scene, and then my mind will be like, oh, let's use that thing in a certain way in something, and use this emotion. So yeah, I think that's usually how it works for me.
All right. I'm actually quite surprised coffee did not feature in any of these answers. But
coffee is like my motivator every morning.
Right.
That's why I get up for work.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's why I get up for work. So coffee is truly, replaced everything else in Ramya's order list of priorities.
It is my significant other. It is my, success metric. My metric for success is just if I am able to afford coffee made by someone else, I'm successful in life. I don't want to make my own coffee.
Right. I mean, I truly wish that, like everybody had such simple metrics to sort of define what success means to them. Because again, like success is a very, very subjective thing, right? And everybody is on a rat race constantly. And today, given social media, like as much as I was asking you about artists who inspire you and, who sort of get you out of that creative rut. Sometimes, like you said, especially when it comes to an art form like yours, imitation is necessarily maybe not the best for a form of flattery, right? Because there's a very thin line and you want to make sure that you're not crossing that.
Yeah, because they're all English alphabets at the end of the day. There's only 26 of them. So.
Yeah, it's like music. There's only 7 swaras. There's only so many different ways in which you can actually like sing.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. I am no expert on that, so I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, just moving back, to the subject and talking about what you do. Ramya, as an artist, has sort of created a niche for herself on social media, right? Being an introvert that you are, like I said in the beginning itself, you've done an exceptional job of connecting with your followers and constantly, indulging in social media engagement, right? So that is very good for business. But for Ramya as a person, how does that sort of work? Have you gotten better at it, or do you still feel like, no, I'm more comfortable behind the scenes?
I think it's the same. I think I'm still comfortable that there's a screen and I control when I speak to people, right? So if it gets too much, so if I'm reading like 50 DMs in a day, then I'm done with it and I just want to like switch off my phone and not deal with it. And then if I have maybe only 5 DMs, then I'm actually engaging in proper conversation with them. So that's the same. I'm still very much the introvert. I still can only do selfies and like talk to the screen a few times in a month, not more than that. And it's I'm not social still.
Okay. All right. But anyway, today I think we've had a very, very interesting conversation as always, minus the cup of coffee, because this is obviously like a virtual conversation. But I think a lot of, honesty has come through in everything that you said, because I know it's not been an easy journey for you. And from having left a very cushy job, right? You said you were really good at it and you were almost at it for a decade and they were paying you big money. And from having left that to have come here, created a niche for yourself and having built this brand, how special is this brand to you? Of course, it is your identity, it is your baby, but how did it sort of come about? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. This is one of those like airplane napkin ideas.
Okay.
Actually.
Right.
Because I was just trying to come up with ideas when I was on a flight. Had a napkin and I had my pen and I was just trying to come up with ideas for what I wanted to call myself. And honestly, like I've never associated myself so much with my own name because like when I was in India, it was very common. When I went to the West, it was being butchered. So either way, it was like, it didn't feel like myself at all.
Right.
So I thought, okay, let me, shift perspective a little bit. What feels like me? What do I really want to say? And I had one of my bosses, and this is why like I'm actually really good friends with all of my ex-bosses because they've made such good impacts on my life.
Right.
So one of my bosses used to call me RB
Okay.
because Ramya biology, and so he would use the initials
Right.
just for ease of use and like for typing and everything.
Right.
So I was just like writing RB over and over again on the napkin and trying to come up with
Right.
different words that would like have those letters in them, I guess.
Right.
And then by like the 7th or 8th try, I had this arbitrary on there, and
Right.
I just loved the word so much because I felt it truly did embody who I was. Right? It's very, it's not following a formula. Arbitrary, by a sense, means there's so much randomness to it, and there's no rules to be followed. You do whatever you want, and that just exists, and that's an arbitrary existence. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to be known as. And I know it's difficult because it's spelled differently. It's like rbtrary, and not a lot of people can spell it properly when they're looking me up. But it's my brand, and like you said, it's it's who I am. It's not even my baby. I think it's just who I am. And every like when I have these like grand visions about who I want to be like 10 years later, how do I want people to know me as, and like what should the name be on the biopic or the conference that I go to where I'm giving a talk, I still see that as arbitrary, and it still feels, even at that point, even a decade later, I would still be making very arbitrary, random, uncategorical sort of art, and that's I'm happy I settled on it, and I think it's gonna stay for sure.
Wow.
It's very hard for me to commit to anything, and this one I think I'm gonna commit to it.
Wow. No, honestly, I'm truly blown away by what you just said, because it's very late in life, okay? For some people, it's very lucky for people who sort of have that epiphany very early on, and they decide that, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what it is, I'm going to go on this path, I'm going to find myself, and I'm going to be really successful at it. But like you said, for someone to start at 30 and sort of be so sure and committed to that, this is the brand, this is what I'm, trying to create for myself, and for it having fallen so perfectly in place, right? That itself, I think, is a very happy accident. And that again checks your happiness check, right?
Yes, right. The happiness check.
I think so. Now our conversation has sort of come full circle, because we've spoken about everything that I sort of wanted to ask you. I didn't want to do a cliche interview with you and ask you about your journey, because I know you've, done a lot of this get to know me posts on Instagram, because you didn't want to do the talking, but you let your art do the talking, and you shared quite a lot of stuff. So I didn't want to ask you any of the cliche questions. But the last question that I have for you today, Ramya, is you've already spoken about the vision that you have for the next 10 years. And what is something that you want to tell yourself? Something that you sort of truly believe, maybe it's not an advice or a mantra or anything of that sort, but something that you just want to tell yourself to get you through the next 10 years.
I think purpose is a word that comes to mind when we think about that, because I think in your 30s, you're a lot more aware of how the world works and what is your part to play in it, and how you should be bettering yourself and being of better value to other people, which I didn't think about in my 20s. I was just so happy to spend money and look nice, right? So I think it's a period of evolution. So now I'm thinking a lot more about what my purpose is, and I think what's going to get me through the next 10 years is being very clear about that. And lately I've been feeling like my purpose is to get other people to also be creative and find joy in that creativity, and if I can do that really well for the next 10 years, if I can push people's creativity, nudge them a little bit, for them to be happy in what they're doing, whether it was visual or performance arts, or not even art, just math, right? It doesn't matter. But if I can push that, I think I will be true to myself. And maybe that's what I need to tell myself to get through the next 10 years is, what is your true north? And that is to get people to be creative. Are you doing that every day? Most days. Let's not say every day. Most days are you doing that? And if you're doing that, then you're fine. So I think for the next 10 years, that's what I'm going to tell myself is wake up, do things that will help people become more creative while I'm enjoying my own creativity.
Wow. I truly, to be very honest,
It's profound.
It is. It truly is. I don't know whether it's because I've been reading a lot of philosophy of late, or whether it's the people I meet that have been giving me these wonderful, ideologies of life. Because somewhere I think it's these conversations that we have, right, that truly make us want to think back and reflect on the lives that we lead. And I think it set us on this beautiful journey where we share these stories, where we talk about life, and we sort of understand, we self-introspect, and we sort of wish for everything to sort of fall in place. And as corny as it sounds, I think the universe sort of conspires to make it happen for us. And I think it is so beautifully done in your case, Ramya. You are truly a wonderful teacher. You're a very, very creative person. And I see a lot of beautiful things in your future. I don't mean this as a psychic or anything, but I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart. I wish you a lot of success. And once again, I'd like to thank you for joining me on my podcast today and sharing all of these amazing details about your life and, just being so candid, just being arbitrary, right? I think that's truly defines who you are. And I'm so glad you found that brand. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. This was an amazing chat. And I am looking forward to everybody you're going to meet in your podcast, because I'm sure you'll have the same kind of amazing questions for them. And I'm just waiting to learn from you, learn from them, and, grow who I am as a person as well.
Beautiful. That is exactly what this podcast, The People I Meet, is all about. It is all about sharing stories of real, raw, and honest people. All right. So with that, I come to the end of this episode of the podcast, The People I Meet. I will meet you in yet another interesting episode with yet another interesting personality. Until then, take good care of yourself. This is me, Shruti Vijay Kumar Vasant, the radio jockey from Chennai, is signing off. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.